Hello, in our previous lecture, we were talking about the history of computers in order to understand how artificial intelligence started and developed. Now that we have that and we understand much better how computers arrive or how computers develop, we can understand the history of artificial intelligence. So let's start. Now we're going to divide this topic into two lectures. In the beginning, we're going to start talking about this section, the foundation of AI, and we're going to start talking even earlier than 1940s. We're going to talk about the early development, and we're going to talk about ELIZA and other first application. And then we will talk about the winter AI. That is very interesting, okay? And in the next section, we are going to talk about the revival and all these new exciting growth that has developed in the last years, in the last decades. So let's start. So I'm going to divide the class in three main sections. In the beginning, I will tell you before computers how we think about not artificial intelligence, but our artificial beings. Yeah. And here we're going to talk about all these weird things that you see here, this duck that look like a machine, this machine that is moving, this device, all those things. Then we will move into the birth of AI, and I'm going to talk about the Turing. You remember that we were talking about the imitation game, so we're going to talk about that. What is that relevant? We're going to talk about ELIZA, that maybe you have heard about that, and we're going to talk about this German conference that is very important. There are many more things that happen, but I'm going to focus on all these few things that happen. Then I'm going to move into the winter of artificial intelligence. Why? So in the Darwin conference, here they start thinking, in few years we're going to have a machine that will be able to think like a human, and to be honest, the computers were very old to even think about doing that. And right now, I don't think we are, at least now, 2024, we are not at that point. So what happened is that later, when few years later, when they realized that they were not going to be able to do those things in the short term, so the investors remove their money, and the grants agency also remove their money. So they have to think the ideas, and then there was a revival. There have been two winters, yeah, of artificial intelligence, and now we're in a new peak of development. Okay, so let's start with the first point. We're going to start with the myth of artificial beings. Okay, so we are going to talk about these mythological and philosophical beginnings of artificial intelligence. And so we're going to talk about myth of artificial beings. So maybe you're like me, that until ChatGPT appeared, you say like, oh my God, this artificial intelligence is actually something that is happening. But what we didn't realize is that it has been happening for a long time. So every time that my email is filtering spams, as we talked in previous classes, is because there is artificial intelligence rejecting the emails, yeah, choosing some of them that are spams. Same thing with YouTube or Netflix, Instagram, all those things are doing that. So it has been there for a long time. And when we think about the human civilization, this idea of artificial intelligence, of artificial being, have been there for a long time. Even in ancient societies, yeah, ancient myth, they were also thinking about intelligent beings. So let me show you just two examples. There are so many, and I'm going to show you a video in the following slide. Here you can find it in case that I cannot show it in YouTube. It's about TED Education, and it talks about Hephaestus and his mechanical services. And this is from the Greek mythology. So imagine how old is this idea of thinking about artificial beings, yeah? In addition to that, I'm not going to show you a lot about this, but in the Jewish folklore, there was this creature that it was called Golem. That is a creature formed from inanimate matter, typically from clay or mud, and it was brought to life through mystical rituals. Yeah, so you can read if you're interested about that. This is a something that show us that different cultures, they were actually thinking about artificial beings. Okay, and maybe each culture has have something, their own creature or their own artificial being. Yeah, even in the literature, if you think about Frankenstein, it's just a combination. Yeah, it's an artificial being created from different parts of different people. Okay, so let's start with the first video, and I hope that you enjoy it. Again, if you cannot watch it, you can go to this link, look at TED Education, or if not TED Education, Hephaestus Mechanical Serpent.
Hephaestus, god of technology, was hard at work on his most ingenious invention yet. He was creating a new defense system for King Minos, who wanted fewer intruders on his island kingdom of Crete. But mortal guards and ordinary weapons wouldn't suffice, so the visionary god devised an indomitable new defender. In the fires of his forge, Hephaestus cast his invention in the shape of a giant man. Made of gleaming bronze, endowed with superhuman strength, and powered by ichor, the life fluid of the gods, this automaton was unlike anything Hephaestus had forged before. The god named his creation Talos, the first robot. 3 times a day, the bronze guardian marched around the island's perimeter, searching for interlopers. When he identified ships approaching the coast, he hurled massive boulders into their path. If any survivors made it ashore, he would heat his metal body red hot and crush victims to his chest. Talos was intended to fulfill his duties day after day with no variation. But despite his robotic behavior, he possessed an internal life his victims could scarcely imagine. And soon, the behemoth would encounter a ship of invaders that would test his mettle. The bedraggled crew of Jason, Medea, and the Argonauts were returning from their hard-won quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece. Their adventure had taken many dark turns, and the weary sailors were desperate to rest in a safe harbor. They'd heard tales of Crete's invulnerable bronze colossus and made for a sheltered cove. But before they could even drop anchor, Talos spotted them. While the Argonauts cowered at the approach of the awesome automaton, the sorceress Medea spotted a glinting bolt on the robot's ankle and devised a clever gambit. Medea offered Talos a bargain. She claimed that she could make Talos immortal in exchange for removing the bolt. Medea's promise resonated deep within his core. Unaware of his own mechanical nature and human enough to long for eternal life, Talos agreed. While Medea muttered incantations, Jason removed the bolt. As Medea suspected, the bolt was a weak point in Hephaestus's design. The ichor flowed out like molten lead, draining Talos of his power source. The robot collapsed with a thunderous crash, and the Argonauts were free to travel home. This story, first recorded in roughly 700 BCE, raises some familiar anxieties about artificial intelligence, and even provides an ancient blueprint for science fiction. But according to historians, ancient robots were more than just myths. By the 4th century BCE, Greek engineers began making actual automatons, including robotic servants and flying models of birds. None of these creations were as famous as Talos, who appeared on Greek coins, vase paintings, public frescoes, and in theatrical performances. Even 2,500 years ago, Greeks had already begun to investigate the uncertain line between human and machine. And like many modern myths about artificial intelligence, Talos' tale is as much about his robotic heart as it is about his robotic brain. Illustrating the demise of Talos on a vase of the 5th century BCE, one painter captured the dying automaton's despair with a tear rolling down his bronze cheek. But wait, who are these bedraggled sailors, and what is a golden fleece? Learn more about Jason and the Argonauts' epic adventures with this video, or grapple with the burning questions surrounding AI with this video.
In the previous slide, we were talking about mythology. Now we're going to talk from a philosophical point of view. this idea of artificial beings. And you're going to find many philosophers talking about this, but I'm going to focus on Descartes. And why? Because I know you have heard this quote, I think, therefore I am. So imagine now that we, like many centuries after he said that, we are still thinking about what this means in terms of artificial intelligence. Yeah. So, and we will talk about that, like when are we going to find this line between um, something that is alive or not alive in terms of computing. Yeah. So I am a biologist, and for example, we have doubts about, do we consider a virus alive or not? Could we consider a mitochondria alive? Because maybe in the past it was alive, but now it went inside of another organism and cannot live by himself. So now we're thinking about artificial intelligence. When is the line that is like that this is alive or not? And remember, I think, therefore I am. So it's very interesting that an organism, that this is not, this is these algorithms are taking decisions, and we don't know if they are reasoning or not, or when we're crossing that line. Okay, so if we want to understand the foundation of this, and as I said to you, why Descartes was is so interesting to talk about this exploration, we need to talk that Descartes was much before the computers were this digital revolution, and in his case, he was trying to interpret the planet, yeah, using mechanistic view. In other words, he thought that the universe was governed by physics, by laws of physics, and in his case, uh, not only the universe, but humans, for example, there was a duality between body and mind. Yeah, and these ideas inspire, for example, these ideas of machine learning. We will see that. Why? Because of these automata. Yeah, that then in the Renaissance there was not more mythology, it was not philosophical, but they actually start creating these self-operating machines that later is what happened with computers. And just not to spend a lot of time, I just wanted to remind you, I just told you that he lived much before the development of artificial intelligence. However, his debate, his ideas are still important for the debates about AI and its philosophical implications. And he talked about these mechanical devices that are called automata, that I will show you more in the following. So these automatas, first we talk about in terms of mythology, then in terms of philosophy, these self-operating machines. And he said that they mimic human and animal behavior. Okay, so now that we finished with Descartes, now we're going to go to the jump to the Renaissance, where we don't see more mythology or philosophy, but we start seeing how they start building this automata. So now we're talking about some examples of automata, and here you see all these machines, all these early mechanisms of machines that they move by themselves. Yeah, and this was the idea of an automata, and there were many that were created during the Renaissance, and these are just examples of what they understood that it was an automata, and it was just based on mechanical ingenuity and foreshadow the computational models of intelligence. Yeah, and what is an automata? So are self-operating machines or devices that in this case they move according to preset mechanisms, often powered by gears, springs, and weights. So it's very interesting. So we went from mythology, yeah, centuries, thousands of years ago. Then we start moving into the philosophy, and then we start finding these early mechanisms that we start creating some automata. And this is many times how science work, that you start creating the foundations, theoretical foundations, to later have an application. And now we're going to start moving more into what, when computers start appearing, to start actually creating this idea of artificial intelligence more than artificial beings. Okay, so we just finished the first section, and I hope that it was clear that we move from automata, self-operating devices, yeah, that they said they follow a preset rules. So, and we went from myth to philosophy to actually building devices. Okay, now in the next section, we will start moving into the computer era when we see the birth of artificial intelligence.